Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024, ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian makes the team collaboration software that powers enterprise businesses around the world, including over 80% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian's AI-powered software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, you'll have more time to do the work that matters. In fact, Atlassian customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
Football competence is only a small piece of what you're looking for. Being aligned from a mission and vision standpoint, the character, and just embodying the things you want in the way we talk to players.
So I think connecting your staff, making sure when you bring new coaches in, you talk about alignment. Like, I think a history of this program, where we've come from, is incredibly important.
We're back for another episode of our Champion Series here in 2025, doing it in a roundtable format today. I'm joined by two state champions. One's a repeat performer here. We had him on actually as our first in our Champion Series right at the end of 2023, and he's been on multiple times here. Love talking ball with him. That's Kyle Schmitt. He's the head coach at Archbishop Spalding, three-peat champion in the MIAA in Maryland. So Kyle, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Keith. Always enjoy having you coming on, man. It's a pleasure.
And our other guest, our champion, is Coach Spencer Emerson, the head coach at Class B state champion in Maine, Falmouth High School. Coach spent some time at the college level. This is his first year back at the high school level and has done a great job in obviously setting the standard here. So a lot to live up to after this year, Coach. Thanks for taking the time.
Appreciate you having me on, Keith. Yeah, it was a fun fall, so hopefully we can build on it.
So I'm going to let you guys roll with this like we do. And our topic today is aligning your staff. You know, we spend a lot of time working on getting our kids aligned. And I learned early on in my career that sometimes you get too focused on the kids and forget you got the adults in the room too, and got to make sure they're aligned and that you're taking care of them. So I'm really excited to let you guys dig into this topic, and I'll let you roll.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith. Man, I think alignment is, and kind of just throwing it out there, Spencer, my first question for you, you're a little more 12 years in here at Spalding, and staff is, if anything, we're turning people down at this point. But I remember being a first-year head coach at both Spalding and Athelton, and way back, I was curious hiring, and maybe, because I think that's the start to alignment. Like when we get a staff aligned, I mean, it's all about like hiring the right people. So I was kind of curious, man, just to hear from you on how you did it about a year ago. I know you told me.
Yeah.
Hired and just maybe some of your, I don't know, whether it's questions, what you're looking for, building it, kind of go from there.
Sure. I think for me, I came in guns blazing, really excited. And, I'm thinking I'm going to get my guys in the building, teaching and doing all that stuff. And when I got there weren't any teaching openings, right? So I was a very reputable school, especially as public schools go in Maine. When I realized that I wasn't going to be able to just kind of place people in the building, I really had to make sure we thought about who had the capacity to do what we wanted them to do. So the first thing was we opened it up, right? We posted. I knew going into it, coming from the college level calling plays, that I would handle the offensive defensive side of the ball as far as play calling and game planning. So the first thing was getting a D coordinator in, someone that I thought could run a unit. We opened it up, had a lot of qualified people as far as high school football goes apply. Old school sat down, had interviews. They were one-on-ones with just me and the coach, because I think at the end of the day, it was about someone I thought I could trust with that unit. So, at our level, we have 4 paid assistants in Maine and then volunteers after that as far as school budgeting is concerned. In my mind, it was like, all right, I got to get a defense coordinator. Structurally, I got to get a defensive coordinator, someone to do offensive line, and then a JV head coach. That was kind of like the spots. After that, it was more someone who could add positionally as needed. So started with hiring a DC. We got that done, hired a young coach, actually. It's funny because when you're coming up, you hear a lot about experience and you hear a lot about readiness to be able to run a unit, especially at the collegiate level. But the high school level, for me, it was about finding someone who I could work with really closely. Coach, I think there's a level of competence needed for hiring certain roles. And I think, what gets you in the interview room, and then how you present yourself and your character and your habits is what's helped you get the job. So we opened it up and ended up hiring a young coach who was 26 years old. And frankly, if you asked me when I got hired, if that would be the case, probably not, because as a young coach myself, typically I would hire kind of, a quote unquote OG to come help with some experience. But we found a young guy to kill it and ended up hiring. So it's hilarious to go that transition. You probably went through recently too. Yeah. So I think for me, it was really about competence, right? Football ability. What's your scheme? What are you going to run? But I think that's such a really small part when you think about hiring coaches. At the end of the day, no one invented the game of football. Everybody's kind of running what they think is best, and everybody's a product of what they've experienced up to this point. So for me, it was like, all right, who's going to come in and keep the main thing, and who's also going to be aligned with our core values. So I established core values, hired a defense coordinator that I thought fit really well within that. But I think for me, from an alignment standpoint, what I pictured in my mind when I got hired to what actually happened was vastly different. And it ended up being great. But I think it's just kind of a lesson in being flexible, being adaptable, to understand that not everything's going to go exactly the way you plan out in your brain. And I think that's actually kind of symbolic of a football game, right? When you're coaching a game, you have a game plan, and then, things go a certain way. So fortunate to have the staff we had, but from an alignment standpoint, it was about establishing someone for the defensive side of the ball, specific roles within that. And then what we found was we had some young coaches that a former player of mine from a previous school I coached at wanted to come on and volunteer, which was a great addition, getting his feet wet coaching, but also knows the language, could talk to the kids in a way that was a little bit more down to earth than myself, because I'm thinking of the macro sense, right? I'm thinking of the whole program, where some of those younger guys can have very, very specific, detailed conversations from firsthand experience, So I thought that was kind of useful. But I think the biggest thing I realized in hiring was football competence is only a small piece of what you're looking for. Being aligned from a mission and vision standpoint, character, and just embodying the things you want in the way we talk to players and having those conversations about how we treat our guys, expectations behaviorally, things like that. So I think
my first note is hire character, train skill. We sit with guys, and I can't tell you the last guy I asked to draw a pass route up or a defense or how you defend this formation at our level. And especially I have a fairly 12 years of pretty established varsity staff. And so I'm hiring under squad, we call them, JV, JVA, JVB, freshman, whatever. We have 3 teams, and you're looking for guys who are going to get the kids to come back the next year, and not guys that your football knowledge, I kind of call it inside out hiring. I'm looking for what I need. I'm not looking for you to bring new scheme and new drill work. We're trying to be simple. We don't need all your drills and all your plays. Keep those in that backpack that you're wearing on the sideline. I don't need those. I need guys that can come in and be good with the kids and actually fit. Can you fit? You're not going to have a voice really early, because we have a lot of established guys. And I just need high character people that are going to be, all in on the program, frankly. I loved, you touched on former players.
Yeah.
Been incredibly valuable for us. We have multiple. I've had them through the years. They're awesome. They're the best. And then take what you do seriously, but not yourself. That is a massive thing in our program. You better be able to laugh. You better laugh at yourself. But even at our level, when you're curious I got to imagine a question is always, what's your availability? Because they're not all going to be able to be there at 3:00 in the afternoon and be with us. Can you be there right at the beginning of practice? We'll take meetings, things such as that nature. But I love that. I think you're right on with a lot of what you said, that just the idea of the football knowledge. And that's, for young coaches that are out there, man, can you get in and do what I'm asking you to do first? We'll build the knowledge. We'll work there. But because this thing's a lot different than watching Ohio State, Notre Dame and come out with a bunch of plays. So I think that's a massive part. I'll add one piece, and as you get going through this in your first year as a high school head coach, like retired guys. And we got a retired fireman as our DC, retired government worker, working in strength and conditioning. Like those guys are phenomenal. And then young guys, who just want to coach. It's those guys with 12 and 13-year-old kids in a million games. They can be challenging, and which you're giving them a little stipend. And those guys, that's when you see a lot of them step out of it because their daughter's got field hockey or their son's got baseball. But no, I couldn't agree more on that alignment. You touched on this, and I wanted to maybe get into it because it actually was my second note. Like now that whether you have them or do they match up? Do they align? Like if we're going to align, we better make sure they align at the start. You touched on your core values. I'm a massive fan. We have them as a program. Frankly, when we evaluate our players, we give them to our players in the summer. And as I look for coaches, I'm looking for the same things. Do you want to maybe kind of expand on your core values? And I could do the same when you're done.
For sure. No, I think I'll always preface this by saying, I tell the guys, you're going to hear these at a nauseating amount. Like these are going to be what we're about, who we are. When someone looks at Falmouth football, they're going to be able to see these things. So we use the acronym ADU. So it stands for attitude, detail, and urgency. So attitude, from a positive attitude, from an approach standpoint, all the way down to attitude you play with. So we have a get to, not have to mindset. We get to watch film, we get to lift, we get to show up early. And we talk about that. The attitude we have towards our work and towards the opportunity we have is something that we're passionate about. So that attitude piece is first. It stems from a positive attitude, really, truly turning every situation to a positive and looking it through a positive lens. The detail part's that attention to detail. And I always say, you never know what detail it's going to be to win or lose a football game. You can't pick and choose what matters. How you keep your locker tells me how much you care about the program, right? How your body demeanor and your attentiveness in the meeting room and the film room are going to tell me how interested you are in this game plan. The detail you have, whether it's PAT versus third down, right? Third down, everybody's excited because the fans are on their stands, but we score a touchdown, everybody just assumes the PAT is going in. You know what I mean? So we talk a lot about the detail piece, and whether that's, little things like you don't stand on the white line, you stand with your toes to the edge of the white line. Just things like that.
Master the mundane. That's
exactly.
Spalding players, if any are listening, they're shaking their head. They've heard that many times.
Great. Yeah. So, it's attitude, positive attitude, that attention to detail, and then the urgency piece, that sense of urgency. We always say we're not waiting for something to happen. And off the field, we actually talk a lot about our role in the world. And this is where the high school level is great because we're really teaching people how to be young men, productive members. The world doesn't happen to you. You're an active participant within it. And that has to do with how you go about your business with everything. School, what kind of son you are, what type of part-time worker you are at your job, what kind of guy you are in class, all those little things. So when we talk about urgency, it's urgency in everything we do. If you're not excited to do things, there's probably a reason. And we want to peel back the layers and find out that reason. So our sense of urgency is something that we practice. And on the field, it's easy to show, right? Hey, going no huddle, going tempo, pressuring on defense, playing aggressive. That urgency is fun. But do you have urgency to get to practice, right? Are you on the field for pre-practice? Are you getting taped up at the time you should be getting taped up? Think little things like that. So, we say ADU, positive attitude, attention to detail, sense of urgency. Those three things kind of encompass all the little offshoots that we talk about.
Yeah.
But those core values, are something we're passionate about and something we hope to build on going forward.
It's something I found when you talk about alignment, the consistency of the message. As a young coach, 16 years ago, I felt like I had to give them something every day. Watching like Miracle and Herb Brooks and walking into the locker room, and I felt like that needed to be every Friday, or that even needed to be every Monday. And this idea that if I'm getting tired of saying it, that means it's probably just starting to sink in to their ears. And you're right, the core values really began to kind of clarify my message and bring clarity to the kids. And even, again, we're talking more about our staff in this talk, but everybody starts hearing it over and over and over again. And then they start to repeat it. And that's how you get this stuff going. And for the coaches, it's not a new message every week. It's actually a slight tweak to the same message week after week after week.
And Coach, I would actually even say this year, I got there year one, you're not thinking about winning a gold ball, right? You're thinking about establishing
culture. Yeah.
So it felt like, whether it's pregame, end of practice, the message felt like one long one over the course of months, kind of differences of the same long run-on sentence. And, and I think that's where having those core values and having it aligned and making sure the staff is butting on those, the staff is saying at their drill work, right? Hey, make sure you have attention to detail, right? The way we set up our drill work, set up bags, set up cones, things like that. But also if you hear something long enough, it becomes part of the fabric of your day, right? It becomes a part of kind of, the core values you start to take those with you. And I think having the coaches bought in on those from the opening interview to them hearing the message every day at practice. It's even a reminder for them, because, when you talk about, you get sick of saying it's probably starting to sink in. I kind of gauge our program by how often I hear others say it, right?
Yeah.
and I hear coaches echoing those core values and speaking on those. And it's funny because for me, you have these aha moments every season. You're kind of observing whether it's team dinner or I'm watching the JV game, and you hear certain things, and you're like, all right, we're on to something. You know what I mean?
And you know what? It's typically not on Friday night. It's the moments where it might be something in school. It might be at a day of practice. We had a team a couple years ago went and we were waiting for the girls' field hockey game to end, and all the guys stood on the side, cheered like crazy. The girls won. They ran on the field, dog piled on the field and it was like, oh, these guys are in. They just care about this place and they care and they're together. And I'm with you, man. I'll kind of just add to that and we'll move on. And for us, we talk about being the toughest team in Maryland. It's a mantra for us. We don't say it all the time. It, again, speaking of ease and simplicity, it becomes the hashtag for everything in our program that I can tag onto things. And it's the message, it's just, that's toughest team in Maryland. So that's really big. I think something we do, and 4 values for us are tough, persistent, passionate, and grateful. And what I did was look at former players, because I didn't have these 12 years ago. And it was probably something, it's been more in the last 5 years or so that I really developed and went all in on them and began to talk to our kids about them in training camp and explore examples of them and things. But I looked at former players. I was like, what's common values? That's kind of how I developed them, was I looked at our former players in our program and what was a common values in all those guys. And I found that, and what I do is now kind of present and add a little storytelling to it. Like I talk about a kid like PJ Pognus, a linebacker for us, who was persistence, torn ACL, COVID, all that stuff, and just kept working, kept showing up. Talk about gratitude to the former players and the people whose shoulders we're standing on. So I think if you can, what that does for me, not only gives them the value and talk about the values in action, and like toughness, body language, passions, extra work, persistence, show up and compete, gratitude's just being all in and leaving areas better than you found it. Going back to your, how clean is the locker room, clean is the area under the bleachers we put the pads. I talk to them, that's gratitude. Like if you're grateful for a place, you're going to keep it clean. And so with that though, I think another part of alignment, and I'm big on this with our staff, is we connect to those the coach before me died of pancreatic cancer, but he built an amazing foundation at Spalding. I didn't know him personally, but I've obviously learned all about him, and we connect to that. Is our program a different spot now than it was then? Absolutely. But that's the foundation of Spalding football. And so those values have come Coach Whittle's staff before me. And so I think that sense of we're standing on their shoulders is really important. And our staff needs to know that, because you get young coaches and they think, man, it was always like this. They forget we were 3-8. So I think that's really important to build it and make them understand that, man, it was really hard. And I have some guys that have been with me all 12 years here who there were some days where there was 5 coaches out there and we're coaching both sides of the ball and we're running up and down and just trying to make it happen. And now we got 2 coaches per position at some spots and that's awesome. It's just different. So I think connecting your staff, making sure when you bring new coaches in, you talk about alignment. I think a history of this program, where we've come from, is incredibly important to educate everybody in the place on that. We hire a guy this year. Okay, so all we do is we actually realized every kid in our program now, all they know is we win the MIAA championship. They had no idea that 4 years ago, no one had won one. Our coaches need to know that too, that process continues. But man, that's awesome. And I think this one is massive when it comes to alignment, is just communication. You're new with a new staff, first year, and I'm maybe not even, some of this might be just overall big picture. So I guess I would say, how do you, and I guess even to get in the weeds of just weekly schedule. Your monthly schedule, how do you communicate with your staff and how do you keep them all, really everybody on the same page? Because as you and I both know, you coming from college, I worked in college years ago, but there's not 7 a.m. staff meeting every day anymore, or all day on Sunday sitting in the room together. It's a little different. How do you do that with your guys?
I think about it like macro to micro, right? Almost like a funnel. So the first thing I do every year, the first thing I came in with was just a yearly calendar, right? What is it? All the dates I had, right? So our schedule for games, our summer workouts, fundraisers, things like that. Our youth night we do in the summer, JV games. I have put those all on just a Google Sheets, kind of edit it to make it look pretty.
Christmas break tradition.
This is what we got for the rest of the year. And then, I think from a communication standpoint with the staff, like you touched on it earlier, right? Availability. Hey, coach, what are you able to come to? Hey, what's the practice time that makes sense? And we do that on the front end so that when we kind of got into it, I'm big on predictability. I want kids to know what's going to happen. I think if
no reason not to know.
As coaches, there are no surprises on game day, right? We need kids to feel, from a structural standpoint, you build out the calendar for the year, and then each week if there's any, you got to front load the communication on any changes, right? So you make it predictable, but things happen, right? Hey, we're not going to be able to get on the turf because soccer's playing in a playoff game.
Yeah.
This Wednesday, we're going to be on the grass field. No worries. Nothing changes from a operational standpoint, but just things like that. You know what I mean? For us, that means we don't have goalposts. So maybe the PAT period got taken out, right?
Yep.
Maybe we move that to Thursday. You know, all those little things that happen.
You know, Ryan Day deals with that. Hey, Ryan Day's got his own problems, I guess. But hey, guys, we're not going to be out there because field hockey's finishing up and special teams coach take the day off.
Exactly. Imagine that. Hey, guys, special teams good, head inside. But I think the biggest thing, and I think communication is really just about consistency. As long as there's constant communication, like for me, I think coming from the college game, and I'll be honest, I was in my head like, all right, Sunday, game plan day. We'll get in, we'll get together, we'll watch a bunch of tape, we'll come together and talk to myself. All right, what am I really doing here? These guys that I'm paying a small stipend, I'm really going to ask them to give up their whole Sunday. Some of them are going to church. Some of them have their own kids' games they're going to. Some of them just want to, you know, so for
watch
me.
the NFL. Yeah.
So I ended up, you know, creating some shared Google documents. Hey, you watch this, you watch that, put our notes together. And then Sunday in the evening, let's jump on Zoom and kind of have a collaborative meeting. It worked out really, really well. And what it allowed us for it to be efficient. Like I hired guys because I trusted them. I don't need to sit there and watch film with them and hold their hand and make sure they're getting the game plan done. Communication for us, we have the coaches group chat. Anything goes in there. Text message is usually easiest because people can see it in real time, or they'll be at work and check their phone. We utilize Zoom on the weekends, so we don't all have to come in because guys kind of live in different parts of town, things like that. And then communication for us with the parents is crucial. You know, for us, our boosters for our program actually does all of Falmouth football flag all the way up to varsity, right? So they're involved.
Nice.
Level up. So it's really nice alignment there. But from a communication standpoint, we blast out messages to parents, any changes in schedule. I send a team email every Monday morning about the week ahead.
Yep, Sunday morning.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think for us, it's just one of those things where the communication has to be consistent. It's got to be, you know, almost like, I don't want to use the term repetitive, but it's got to be kind of like,
listen, hey man, that's my first note.
I say to the players and the coaches, there's no such thing as over communicate.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. You get people unhappy, be slow on it. Their biggest gripe is I'm filling their inbox or their, you know, their team snap, or which is what we use. And I'm annoying them with those messages, then we're good. Like, I'm okay with that. That's the biggest criticism. I'm with you. Weekly email every Sunday for us. And then year round, you know, I'm sending them out. Our guys in the weight room as we speak, and they're heading down and they're in there. They know when to be there. They know what the dress is. They know what time. They know what we're doing. They know when we're getting out. And I think, you know, as coaches, like there's enough things that people can be critical of us for. Don't allow it to be you're in the room longer than you should be, or you're starting earlier or later, or you're in the wrong place that you said you would. Those are headaches that just can't happen. And I'm with you. Repetitive all the way, clear guidance. I think for our coaches, I think we have to be really, really strong on our standards and expectations. And I have how you communicate with parents. Like I tell my coaches, if someone approaches them in the parking lot, you don't have to speak to that person. No. That's wrong. That's not, and our parents know that's not the way to do it. So I'm very clear with them, but how to dress. Coaches should know how to dress. We're not khakis and polos on the sidelines by any means. It's Spalding. Hey fellas, we wear Spalding stuff. We're in black and wear what you want outside of that. You know, how we act on the sidelines. I made a joke about the backpacks, but coaches don't need to wear backpacks on the sidelines. No gloves, no cleats. This is not who we are. And social media. I always tell our coaches, do not create any battles that we don't need on social media. If you want to celebrate our program, absolutely. But I think it's things we all know, but I see a lot of it, and we don't need to win battles on social media. And celebrate our program, build a brand. And then obviously, you know, off the field behavior, you know, we have to communicate all of those things repetitively. And you pause before repetitively. I think that's the truth, man. There's a boredom to being a good head coach. And you end up saying the same thing a lot. And you better be comfortable with it, you know. So, and I added to that, man, guys who don't fit in, they tend to leave on their own.
I agree.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. If you're fit, if your culture and your program and your alignment isn't for everybody, some of them will see themselves out the door on their own. And what kind of moving to like building trust, fostering collaboration, and you know, I think kind of just starting with game day, practice day, you know, roles and responsibilities. So critical. Obviously, a piece that, like you even said, I got to hire a defense coordinator off the bat, but then being really, really exact on like what guys do, like what's your game plan responsibility, what's your practice responsibility. How do you do that? I mean, as a first year head coach, I know I was nowhere near, I think, as organized as you were 16 years ago. So just kind of curious
it's funny because, again, I kind of touch on like the ideal versus real, right? Coming into it, I'm like, I remember, when I'm at Chicago, it's like, all right, we have this person to do this, and you have all these hands on deck, right? So when I think about from a game plan perspective, and I always say operationally, from like the way we practice to pitch, like operationally, clearly defined roles, right? So I always say that I tell the staff, I'm like, guys, it might be annoying when I ask you to review something one more time, but I just want to make sure I have a clear understanding. So like I trust them to execute something, but I can't have it go on the field or be given to the
that repetition thing again.
Yeah, right. So a lot of times I'll be like, hey, could you make sense of this for me one more time? But I think so ultimately it starts with the idea of like making sure that I'm aware of everything that goes out towards players. Anything player facing externally to the guys is I've seen it, I've signed off on it, I'm good with it. As far as roles, so something as simple as like, hey, our O-line coach, I want to know when you're watching film, I want to know like who are the guys on the D-line that are game busters, who's going to, make our heads rattle. Hopefully we've seen the same thing, or maybe you've noticed something I haven't. Our O-line coach does a really good job with like tells, hey, this guy does this, or, hey, this guy likes to, when he's lined up on the left side, he likes to pass rush, or, things like that. But for us, clear defined roles. So like for the O-line coach, I want it, the box, and that goes with game prep and then game day eyes. I think an underrated part of aligning a staff is teaching coaches to not watch the football and not watch the game as a fan. It's so difficult. One of the hardest things I'm still learning each day. I have to remind myself, right?
Absolutely.
When I tell a coach, hey, you're watching the backside of all these runs, I need to know what's going on in that backside C gap. Are we going to pull that thing? Do we have the naked off of it? Do we got to go solid? All those little things, right? So I think that from that standpoint, being clearly defined, expectations, telling coaches, I need you to look at this for this reason. I mean, week to week, that could be different based on the team we're playing, right? Sometimes we play old school wing tee.
Yeah.
Like, all right, hey, I need to know from your perspective, is it old school, hey, follow the guards? Is that enough for our linebackers, or is there anything we need to give them more? Things like that. And then from a game day, I say game day operations, clearly defined roles. Hey, coach, your job is to set up the headsets pregame. Hey, coach, your job is to make sure we get the whiteboards. Hey, coach, your job is to make sure the trainers don't need anything from us on our bus. They're taking everything in their car, right? And just having clearly defined roles, a tangible checklist that I bring in every Friday morning, put it on the desk in the locker room office space we have, and then they can kind of tangibly see the line items that need to be checked off before we hit the road or before we get into pregame. To me, for some guys, I think it might seem a little annoying or kind of overkill, but again, it's that repetitive communication that I think, goes a long way.
As you're talking, I listened to a guy actually just took a job in North Carolina. Mike Lombardi is on with Bill Belichick's general manager, and he's on a bunch of shows and had a podcast and writes a bunch. But one of the sayings he has is victory lies in the organization of the non-obvious. And as you're talking, I'm thinking the non-obvious. It's the headsets. It's who cleans up, takes care of the boards, the medical kits, how we handle officials. As you're talking, I'm thinking nobody talks to officials on our sideline. I talk to officials.
Exactly.
I work my butt off to build relationships with those guys. Don't screw it up with a comment on a holding in the third quarter. But it's just this idea of just all the non-obvious. Yeah, you got to be good schematically. You got to have great players. No kidding. Every coach in the country knows that. But the non-obvious is every detail. Pre-game warm-up when you're going out, when you're coming in. Like you said, the game plan, or do we have 5 offense coaches watching the football?
Right.
And, and I often tell our guys up top, I don't need running commentary of the game. Like that's cool. I know he was open, or I know that play should have worked, or I know the right guard got beat. Like I need to know what, like as you're mentioning, the backside of outside zone, or how they're playing it. And it's really important. And that's good. I'll tell you, just kind of going on that, we're very similar. I don't want to double up on a lot of things you said because it was excellent. And something I do to evaluate that each year is exit meetings. When you talk about roles and responsibilities, like how'd you feel in your role responsibility? Do you want more? Do you want less? And then always check up, and I ask, what can I do better?
Yeah.
When we do exit meetings, that's always a question in my exit meetings is like, what can the head coach do better?
Yeah.
And you're always looking for that feedback from them, and just to get an idea of, again, much like we do with our players, are they happy in their role? Do they understand their role? And I think checking in with them in that regard is really important. I love it. That's right on with what you said. How about just as we go building trust? And man, I think this one's massive. Maybe once you brought guys on, and you did this year for the first time, teaching them. Because I think coaching coaches is a fine art, especially in your situation where we're not a big playbook team. I don't just hand a guy a playbook and say, you're going to learn this. A lot of them learn alongside the players. What did the offseason look like? And I'm not privy to every rule in Maine, but what did the offseason look like as you maybe installed the offense and defense specials with the coaches and the players at the same time? How did that go?
No, it's a great question. I think, in Maine, so, you can do weight room stuff, but you can't get into any scheme in the spring. There's no spring ball as far as Maine's concerned. So all of our stuff's done in the summer. So that's after graduation, early June. And then we kind of roll up until August 1. So for us, when we got hired, I would meet with the coaches and just talk, kind of like, for example, with the D coordinator. Hey, what are you thinking from we talked about it in the interview, obviously, but hey, what are things you've done that are successful? These are my fundamental beliefs defensively. We got to be gap sound. We got to have, be multiple in our presentation. And we also got a fanatical effort towards the football, right? That's like what I walk in and say, and then they kind of fill in what they think as far as when I talk to my DC. Now, from a implementation standpoint, the summer we used to truly install. And like you said, coaches were learning alongside players. So, hey, this is what we call formation. And I can send them out digitally. Hey, this is what I call formations. Take a look at it, but I'm going to go over all of it with you guys. Same when I email the players I copy the coaches right on it. I just have a Google contact group, FHS football team, and it's the staff and the players, and it gets sent out. And then I think for me, I came up in coaching under Jack Cosgrove, who's a legendary coach at the University of Miami. He's his man. And he always told me, you have to assume that they don't have any base knowledge when you're talking to them. He said that coaches with players can't just take anything.
Assume they know nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So like little things like, because keep in mind, people don't understand, coach, like we're coaching freshmen in high school, right? Like these kids are like, 13, 14-year-olds. So truthfully, like we got to, and not to take anything away from them, but like we got to coach the 18-year-old the same way we coach the 14-year-old. So I think it's important that people understand that, like, I ask, do you know the difference between field and boundary? Have you ever used those terms before? Okay. No, great. I'll never forget being coaching Division I ball and being in meetings and players raising their hand, coach, what does that mean? And I'm thinking, holy cow. Oh, yeah. We got to do a better job vetting and recruiting to make sure we know what we're getting for players. So I think for me, my past experience have allowed me to really front load and say, hey, we call plays strength to our tight end. Our tight end's in the game when we're on ace personnel. For us, that's 11 personnel. That means one back, one tight end. It's really peeling back the layers and stating what the objectives are. So early on in the summer, it was formations. It was, hey, this is what we line up and why we line up this way. These are the splits. These are the rules. Installing cadence, base things like cadence. We have a quick cadence, but we want to be able to play fast. But if it's, anything quick has to do with syllables and dialect. And if you don't do it right, then you're false starting. So little things like that. So for us, building that trust with a staff was kind of giving them a glimpse into it before we do it on the field. But when I'm installing it kind of in the meeting room and on the field, I'm talking to everybody, not just the players,
Yeah. No, I love that. It's, collaboration is a word it's used a lot in education, as we know as well. But at some point, it's your program. You got to be in charge. You got to be the supreme commander. It's another Lombardiism there, but it's the truth. You got to run it and they got to learn it. What you're teaching, and then they kind of come along with you. And I'll add to that, we don't want all our guys, they got to be aligned. So learning it from you is important, and not skipping steps is massive. And along with that, our defense coordinator has been excellent. A guy named Tyrone Forby has been amazing as an assistant for me, a mentor really. And he is so set on calling everything the same. Like because as coaches, especially as you're putting staff together, high school staff, everybody calls something different. Is it hard joint, wrong arm, and bend and chase, or and all these defensive terms I'm throwing out there as a line guy, but they're all, all these coaches say it the different way. And he is, like you said, I'm going to check in and make sure they really know it, because I don't want him saying it this way, our D-line coach saying it this way, our linebackers coach, and making sure, especially with young players. So assuming they know nothing it's a great philosophy. And because you watch, we call them EDDs, and we start in the spring, and we're allowed 3 hours a week, and we're private school. So our incoming freshmen start with us in March, and we teach them all the same way. They all learn from the bottom as if they were freshmen, which is now the fourth year in a row that our seniors, the rising seniors, are going to learn it. And what we do oftentimes is group them, and we do a lot of indie. We don't go out and do one-on-ones the first day by any means. Stance and start and footwork. And now they'll watch the old guys do it. They're in the group with the old guy, and now they get to see it, and then they get to do it, all the drill work. And what we do with a lot of our new coaches, especially our younger coaches, they kind of serve as the assistant, as the head, the O-line coach or the D-line coach does the drill work. They watch, and so they're learning right along with the kids. Now they're learning all your everyday drills, which is really, you really don't need to get much further than that at our level, in my mind. I agree. You don't need to create new drills every day. You got to do the same ones over and over and over again, kind of a running theme for us. And we also do some Tuesday meetings, 20 minutes. And I always tell the coaches, we're on a Zoom like this, you're never going to get to everything you think you are. Keep it super small. Let them ask questions. Keep it short. Keep it minimal. Their attention span is about 20. We give them half-hour blocks. And then, the thing we also do is, I think you're instilling a culture there as well. And so your young players watching your old players, your young coaches watching your more experienced coaches. Yeah, absolutely. And they all work together. So I love that part.
I was just saying it's fun. You touched on, the seniors getting something 4 years in a row, the base level teaching.
Yeah.
Coming in this year, we had some guys that have been on the team and, returning captains and things like that. And I always try to lay it out to coaches and players even, like, you got to crawl before you walk and walk before you jog and jog before you sprint. And I think breaking it down and letting them know that, like, hey, yeah, I want to get out here and run one-on-ones too. But if you don't know the splits on the formation, if you don't know what foot should be up, you know what I mean? So things like that. And I try to think with coaches, especially younger coaches, explaining to them why that's important, why, like, hey, you got to teach the drill. I always say, hey, if we do a drill circuit in the summertime and the first time through it's not high tempo, that's okay because we're teaching you. I'm cool with that. But I think it's just being able to have that conversation on the front end with the young coaches. I think it's great telling them, hey, watch this drill so that one day we'd love for you to run this drill. You know what I mean? And
I love what you just said there, because I matured. I was a tempo guy at one point. Everything, and there was the rage 10 years ago. Everything was tempo. There's the Art Bryles of the world, and everything we do is fast, and the weight room's fast. And, I bought into that and thought that's who I, needed to be. And our whole program's run like a no-huddle offense. And then you realize that really wasn't the answer for us. Instead of, let's teach it right. The goal is ultimately like the players can run the drill work, which we run into from times at our level. Hey, coach is in traffic. You got EDDs today, senior. And I think the idea of just building it there slowly, because it'll eventually move really quickly.
Right.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that's what's going to happen if you get it done. And again, I don't want to belabor the point, but the repetition of the drill work. We watch a lot of youth football at this level in our state where those players become our players at some point. And I said I should go and watch a youth team practice in August and see the same drill work in November. And that's just a key for them. You're talking, I love, because the thing about big picture alignment, I think a major mistake and I made it when I was in, first year head coach, is I think my job is to cast a big picture vision, how we're going to win football games, how we're going to do it year round. So long-term vision and not getting bogged down by all the tactics, what plays we're going to run, what blitzes we're going to run. And I think you touched on it with your core values, but is there anything, just big picture vision and setting like the long-term vision for your program as you kind of go into year two?
Definitely. And I think, it's so interesting because now what's happening is people are, holy crap, you guys won a championship. And I said this to everybody that'll listen. The goal was never to win one championship. The goal was never to have some magical Cinderella type year one run. The goal was to establish a competitive program. And whether you win or lose, that doesn't tell the whole story. So for us, I always say you don't win a football game on Friday night. You win a game by the stuff you're willing to do each and every day throughout the season. The second part of that was, I ask players this, I ask coaches this. It's something that I was asked when I was really young, but when anybody that comes in contact with the program, that, hey, I want to coach, I want to join the team. Hey, coach, I want to be a manager. Hey, coach, I want to volunteer on your staff. Well, what do you want out of this? What are you looking for? Are you looking for something to do? Are you looking for a way to stay fit? Are you looking to be a football guy? Like, what do you want? And what are you willing to give up? And those are two questions that I really make people answer. And I make them think about it and say it. When I was a young coach, I wanted to coach for the Carolina Panthers and I was going to coach for them. And I was willing to do whatever it took. I didn't care if I ever had married or had a family, anything, those little things, right? But now, what do I want? Well, I want to establish a competitive program. What am I willing to give up? Well, I guess I'm willing to give up some free time or some social time that I think people my age might have. Yeah. But I'm also thinking about it from the standpoint of, what does that look like? And I think so defining what you want things to look like. And for us, it's the attitude, detail, urgency. It's fanatical effort. It's teammate, self. Put the team first, put the teammate second, put yourself third. Those things are what we want to establish. So it's funny because I was watching the pregame show to the national championship and Coach Saban, Nick Saban was on there, right? And he's the gold standard as far as coaches are concerned. He was talking about how do you take the same team that was hungry to win a championship, then you win one, how do you battle complacency? Yeah. And I think for me, it's always been not being concerned. I say the scoreboard is kind of a barometer for where we're at. You know what I mean? And I think being able to establish habits, and I think habits start with like the things you say and the thoughts you have, right? Like your thoughts become your words and your words kind of become your character and your character are your habits. So like, how do you develop culture where you're not, I don't want to say this, but you're not like end all be all as a scoreboard on Friday night? Like how do you stay intrinsically motivated? Yes, a gold ball is fantastic. And obviously we play to win the game, but what motivates you? What do you want? What are you willing to give up? And how do you define those? How do you find intrinsic motivation? So I think going into year two, the idea is, I always tell the guys, what's your edge? You know what I mean? What's going to be your edge over the competition? What are you going to do to separate yourself? Because everybody watches tape, lifts, everybody meets, everybody practices. But what are you going to do within the days, the hours you're awake to give yourself an edge? So to helping kids define what that is going to be, answer those two questions. And then obviously, really buy into the idea that winning is a byproduct of doing things the right way over and over and over again.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
Just a quick break here and a word about our partner on this podcast, Signature Championship Rings. We have one of our guests on this season's champions, Mike Reed, who's the head coach at Gordon High School in Texas. He talked about their state championship rings and the service and pricing he got from Signature Championship Rings. Let's take a listen.
I don't know where y'all bought your state championship rings from, but I did buy mine from Signature at Schmitt, by the way. Schmitt at Signature took care of me on our state championship rings. So, and just to be honest with it, she quoted us out, and we had to get 2 quotes, and she was $16,000 less than the other quote of the business that we went with. And in fact, the other business even ended up, once they lost their business, said, I'll tell you what, we'll do the exact same ring for the exact same cost that they did. So pretty much just told you what, they just charged you double just because they could. So anyway, Schmitt at Signature really took care of us and is taking care of us in a high quality way. So I was really excited to see you start the show off and podcast off that way.
Great pricing, great design, great quality, and great people are things you'll find with Signature Championship Rings, as Mike Reed described there in one of our previous podcasts this season. Be sure to check our show notes to the link to go to Signature Championship Rings.
I have a principal who said that to me, which is an amazing compliment from an administrator. The exact word, byproduct of what you do day in and day out. And we played in the Naval Academy, the first one in 22, we won. And listen, man, we closed down Annapolis. It was a great night. It was fun. And we celebrated, and everybody did. And a night we'll remember for a long time. Well, this year, went home and hung out with my parents. We had pizza and my wife, my son. And then we went to bed. And I was bed by 11:30 and good. And got up and And you're right, that the vision and the sustainability portion. And I never got that. Before I won, I never got that. I would hear Coach Saban, and he was back in the office on Monday morning, and he, and I was like, man, that's crazy. That guy has no joy. Man, the joy is when we're done here, 15 minutes, I'm going to go down and see our guys in the weight room. I'm going to hang out and spend time with them. The joy is in the scholarship offer that a kid got today. And that the joy is watching them grow. And it is overused. We all hear it, and it's overused by people who won't follow it. But you're right. The purpose and the process is a result, and the byproduct is the winning, not the goal. And because you'll drain yourself, you'll drain your players, you'll drain your staff. Talk about alignment. If it is a nonstop press of, and that doesn't mean you don't make sure they're prepared. And, and we go back to like our guys. We serve these kids. So if you show up not ready for practice and you can't commit to this, then we have to find someone else. But the byproduct is winning, not the main goal. And you become less results based. You become extremely habits, routines, and that's where the alignment just totally comes from. And I love, the big picture vision has to be about the daily process. And, you talked about calendar. I look forward to portions of the calendar now. At our school, you recruit at a private school in Maryland, and so the season was over. We took 2 weeks off. We were back in the weight room early December. I was meeting with families on a regular basis. In January, you go this time of year, college coaches are coming through. Our guys are in the weight room. Go through February. Acceptance letters will go out. Those kids will join us. Our year kind of starts in March in my mind. I think our year ends really in February. We have our banquet in mid-February. And in March, we start. And that's where we start a little bit of football, 3 hours a week, continue to lift weights. And by the end of that thing, we're doing OTAs in late May, early June, where we're now starting to do a little 7-on-7, a little group run, working on schematics. And then summer, you look forward to summer every year. Thursday night, 7-on-7. We're just out there working and having fun and running hundreds on Tuesday mornings and lifting on Mondays and Fridays. And you fall in love with that. And then Christmas in August is camp, which is where you really build your, put the final touches on building your team. And so I'm with you, man. You look forward to every part. If it's about one night in November, December for you, man, this thing's going to get old fast. You hit it. It took me 13 years to get number one, and you did it in year one. So you make it look easy, man.
But to have some talented kids, and again, it goes down to the buy-in from the staff. Like, well, we talk about alignment, right? I always say that when I talk to my administrator, it's an aligned, enthusiastic investment, right? So if everybody's on the same page, everybody's excited about it, and everybody's willing to invest in it. But that calendar piece that you touched on, Coach, I love the idea of our, Christmas in August. And for us in Maine, we get 1 week of double sessions, and we talk about it a lot. And I always say, we're going to find out a lot about our team. And like by August, but after summer workouts, most kids returning back on the team, we know what they're capable from an athletic standpoint. You know what they're capable of from a production standpoint, if you're tracking production on the field. But, you're tracking that development piece. How much better did someone get? How their body have grown, so that sophomore to junior year jump, underclassmen to upperclassmen. But what, in camp, when you talk about building your team, you also really recognize from a staff standpoint your ability to evaluate, right? So, when you meet as a staff in between those two practices, you say, hey, how's the first year kid doing? How's he handling it all, right? Our first day of live pads, we're doing blitz pickup. How did that freshman guard do?
The guy you've loved since January. It's like, oh no, he's not good with that. Yeah.
And that's the thing too, right? The kid that's awesome in 7-on-7, now we have pads on. Is he still catching that slant over the middle? His depth on routes, all those little things. So,
we'd be remiss to say, like, as we build alignment on a staff, that like any staff, I think you begin to lean on some guys more than others. Sure. I use a term, I have some disagreeable givers, and they're my guys on staff. That our D coordinator, Tyrone, is definitely one of them. And he is just straight up honest with me, and it's tough. And it's like, but he's right. Dang, right again. We learn to cherish those guys. Because as head coaches, we fall in love with kids. Man, I want that kid to be good. He was here all summer, all season. And the disagreeable givers will be like, man, he's not good enough. Okay.
And that's what it is. And you know what it is? It's so nice to have checks and balances, right? Because now we're only one person. We're human, right? We're just one man. We have a mission and vision. But even our judgment, sometimes we need another set of eyes, another qualified individual to evaluate. But I love that term because, coach, he's just not ready. And I'm like, what do you mean he's not ready? I watched him. Like, yeah, coach, that was with the JV kids. And, we put him with this drill. And he's just not physically ready, whatever that is. And to be able to kind of get smacked in the face proverbially with that reality, you need that sometimes as a head coach, because it goes, okay, now I got to kind of fix my lens and make sure I'm looking for the right things and make sure that the people on my staff understand that we're approachable. Because I think sometimes, the duality of making sure like, hey, this is at the end of the day, the wins and losses go next to our names, and we got to make sure we vet everything. But also we can't get to the point where we're not flexible and not adaptable to what qualified coaches are giving us for information.
Oh, absolutely. Man, don't build a staff. Like I mentioned, Supreme Commander, I think we have to be, we're in charge, but don't build a staff of yes men who are just devoted to you and they're going to tell you how smart you are. That is, listen, if you're afraid of conflict, get out of coaching. And so I got some guys that are going to disagree with me. Yeah. And I've said that to people like who often ask me, hey, 3 champions, it must be great. No, man, it's messy. This stuff is messy. There's conflict every day. Yep. We disagree. We argue. We take stances. Much like the players, when we walk off the field, it doesn't follow us. No. But I mean, it's really messy. And I love what you said there, because the idea of disagreement is healthy as heck. Yeah. It's healthy. So you don't want a bunch of guys that are afraid to tell you, nah, man, I disagree with that. That's 100%. That's not right. And they can get overruled sometimes. I always tell them, give me your feedback. It may be taken into consideration, but you build those. Sure. That's an earned role. The disagreeable giver is earned.
Exactly. And it also, Coach, goes with the idea of making sure we're reflective to ask for those situations. So you always know the vibe, right? If practice just didn't look a certain right, or a period of practice just didn't go the way you thought, sure. You go up to one of your guys you trust. Hey, Coach, we probably should have bagged that. Or, hey, maybe we should have done it. You know what I mean? You kind of ask for that kind of real-time assessment for them to be like, and then you empower them as well. Because now you have coaches feeling like, I had a young coach one time, and I asked him, I said, it was funny, you're about to play a playoff game. We had a play that I'm a big believer of, we better run it right at practice a bunch of times before it makes the call sheet.
Yeah, right on.
We had something on the call sheet, and I said, you're confident in this play? He's like, yeah, Coach, I really am. I was like, yeah, I feel like I did enough in practice. And he was like, no, Coach. And sure enough, on a 3rd down in a playoff game, we converted it. And it was nice to kind of have a coach, one, feel empowered to say, no, Coach, stick with it, and give me the confidence to call it. But secondly, have someone who you can get an honest, if he would have said, nah, I just don't think it is, I would exit out. And it's just nice to kind of get, not only affirmation and confirmation, but just collaboration, like talking about what you said earlier.
And I've done a podcast with Keith on this topic. The idea of this program got better when I delegated and took more of our staff's input and allowed them to do more. And I became the head coach, and I made a lot of game day decisions and program-wide decisions. But you're right on. When I was able to step back and put guys in charge, because you let them own it, much like our players. You own this, and I'm going to guide it, and I'm going to make sure it doesn't fall off the rails. But, man, when they own it, they feel good about it. And they can't be we're going to set a big picture standard and a big picture vision on who we want to be. I told our coordinator years ago, like, I want to be an odd front. I want to move. That's who I want to be. I think that fits our program. That fits our school. It fits what we do both offensively. Like, I want to bring pressure, and I want to make us the team that people don't want to play against. 100%. And on both sides of the ball, all three phases. And he has lived it. I can guarantee you, just looking at our scores all year, nobody wanted to play. Definitely didn't want to play us on defense. And so, but he owned that. I set that, and I said, all right, now you go. And but that is such a term. And as we go with like guys that just aren't, they're loyal to you, but the loyal to you means they're gonna tell you wrong, because we can, especially guys like us who we won. We got a lot of people telling us how great we are. We got to hold tight on to the people who tell us that we got to keep it going.
When you build that family atmosphere, Coach, right? Families fight, families argue. So it's that idea that it's all rooted in respect. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Respectful disagreements are how like our society functions, right? So I think it's the idea of I think you hit it on the head, making sure that like it's people that aren't just going to be yes men. They're also going to give you the honest feedback, and they're also going to affirm you when something might be, when really believing in that alignment and that mission. And you're like, hey, I'm working this. Hey, coach, keep working at it. Absolutely.
But alignment's not just being on the same page. Like, being on the same page is like, oh yeah, we're on the same page with that, right? Yeah, sure. Well, then it goes chaos. All hell breaks loose. You lose by 3 touchdowns, and nobody wants to be on the same page anymore. They're flipping it. Like you said, that alignment's like, nah, man, I believe in it. This is who we are. I believe in it. I love that. Man, that was what kind of, anything you have questions for me? I know I've kind of led it a little bit, but what are some things that you might have?
I think about, you're at a point now, and we touched on this, but I guess if you could kind of maybe kind of summarize it for, in your estimation, battling complacency, how do you keep the hunger and the want for more when you have kids coming back? You have a rising senior who already has his D1 offer, who has his championship ring, and he's all excited and feels like, if I just do what I've been doing, we're going to win this thing. How do you battle that? And how do you do it in a way that's not tearing them down and allowing them to, I tell all the time, like talking to high school kids, like, you want to be the man, that's fine. You got to be the man all the time in the classroom, the way you talk to your teammates, all that stuff. So how do you battle complacency but still empower them to be their best self?
Relentless competition. And we're not we compete in everything we do. We're, whether it's checkers, we're not that. And that's just not my personality. What I mean more though is we continue to bring players together that are frankly trying to beat the other guy out. And that's just how it is. And we're lucky, as I mentioned before we started, we have 120 players in our program. And so that's an advantage, but we have to build on what our strengths are. And so with that, staff as well. We always say, our players trust the coaches that are there every day. So that's where the trust begins, and they build that. So the staff, I always tell guys when they jump on board, man, you want to be close to the players. You want the players to respect you and care about you. Be here every day in the weight room right now, working out with them, being around them. With that, the players, the complacency starts with, man, you can be replaced. I don't think it's cutthroat, but I think it's competitive. And so we have really good players from 12th through 9th, and we were able to not do football all year round. But man, we were able to really do 3 hours of football, and we really get it going in March. So with that, there is heavy competition. I mentioned our D coordinator, offense coordinator, Anthony Messenger. Both of those guys have the green light, which again, me just doing specials, they have the green light to play the best player, period. I will deal with everything else. I'll deal with the kid. I'll deal with anything else that I need to. You play the best players. And so what, that's enabled us to do. And did it take 12 years to get here going into year 13? Absolutely. It wasn't like this in year 1 or 2, coach. It took 10 to 12 to build a roster that's incredibly competitive. And so our guys who are in the weight room know, man, the dude who played behind me last year is working his butt off. For that kid coming up from JV, dang, he's good. And, subtle hints are always healthy. I do exit meetings with all the players the same way of setting the expectations, telling them where they got to do, what they got to do to get to the next level, or what do they got to do to continue to play, or where they can do to start next year. Or we've done something that I think from a varsity standpoint that's been remarkable. And again, this is Tyrone. This guy's no social media or anything, so he's never going to hear any of this probably. So this is good. good because he would be embarrassed I'm talking about him this much, but he's a guy that deserves. We gave up 34 points this year, Coach, and I don't call the defense. I can guarantee that all year in 12 games. So this guy deserves everything he gets, but he won't take any of the credit. So a couple years back, and some of this stuff was born out of COVID, we do red team and black team all summer. And it's not, we don't do any ones and twos. There's no ones and twos. We build the red and the black team on both sides of the ball. Maybe O-line. We do a little bit because I think I do still think there's a little bit of more cohesiveness, but even there, we're at the level where you can have the red group and the black group. And so throughout the summer, it's, hey, red's up, black's up. And it's a mix. And nobody knows. The starting corner from one group's over here. The starting corner from last year's on this group. The starting, receiver, they're on mixed groups. And they just practice. And they practice all summer. And that way, in August, it's awesome. And listen, we have numbers to be 2 platoons. So offense, red offense versus black defense, red offense versus red defense. They're going at it. Everything's evaluated. So there's no, hey, ones are up. Because that's just such a number. Well, I'm a 1. No, you're on the red D. You're on the black D. In our scrimmage, we scrimmaged, we scrimmaged DeMatha for 2 years, scrimmaged Roman Catholic and PA. We just put the red D and the black D. It wasn't our ones. That's what it was just our, and there's this fear of like, well, what if we get run out of it? Well, it's a scrimmage. Who cares? So defensively, we do it all year long.
That's cool.
It's the red and the black all year long. And on Thursday, it's the starting group. He sets it. It is a tense meeting. And here's the 11 that are starting. Here's above the line, below the line. And so you want to fight complacency. It is not easy. It's hard. The kids know it. I had a senior captain come to me. The captain's another thing. We just every week rolling captains. And I named him a captain. He saw it on the sheet. One of the coaches showed him the sheet for practice. He saw he was a captain. I just put him on the Thursday sheet so I remember. And who the captains are when I announce it. And he was like, Coach, man, I didn't have a good week. I don't deserve to be a captain this week. Like, all right, dude, we're good. And so I love that question, the complacency deal. Because, man, we fight and I try to be different, Coach. We celebrate them. We love them. But it's really about the team and the program. And nobody gets real comfortable. We don't let them take themselves too seriously. In this day where there's the next level, there seems to be some feelings of like having to, I don't know, play to their wants and needs. We do. We care about them all. Man, we love these kids. But we made some really challenging decisions personnel-wise. All first world problems. Great players, bad one. And you know what, though? The kids love our school and they love our program, and they're back in the weight room working now. They're not just jumping ship. And I think that's a credit to the coaches and the time they've put in. But I think competition, you want to fight complacency, that bench works really well. No, it really does. And that is not easy. It's easier to say on a podcast on a Thursday night in January, but that goes back to the messy part. There's uncomfortable moments. We didn't play a player in our championship game who I love. I told him, I was like, I'm not okay with it. I told him in his exit meeting, I'm not okay with it. I love that kid. And he's in the weight room probably right now squatting 400 pounds as we speak, working his butt off. I told him, I was like, I'm not okay with it. There was a senior that he got injured mid-year. The senior played his butt off. We started him in the championship game when this kid got back healthy. It was hard, but man, those are the decisions you make. And so I would add that it's not all roses. 12-0, dominating people, and there's hard-ass decisions you got to make. But that's how you keep competition. If you start catering to like, well, I like this guy, or cater to, well, let's split time. Let's just split them. Let's let them both play. And that'll make everybody happy. But that was best for us to win on Friday. So I went on there a little bit, but that's a great question. It is messy though. Again, if you don't like conflict, get out of coaching.
100%. I love the idea of being able to constantly, you talked about, going to Thursday above the line, who's going to start that competition. Obviously, everything's modified to your certain situation. For us, we were fortunate from the standpoint of like, for example, in our conference, we had 5 all-conference DBs, and only 4 are on the field at one time. You know what I mean? So like that's I tell the guys all the time, and I think the messaging and tying the string through the communication we've been talking about is I had a frank conversation with a player this year. Said, hey man, if you're on any other team in the league, you'd be probably player of the year. You probably have 1,000 receiving yards, right? But there's certain personnel packages you're not on the field for us. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things where stay ready, so you got to get ready. And it's funny,
I love that term.
This same player scored the opening touchdown in the state championship game. 5th play of the game, little cop route out of the slots, great. And he was able to run that route effectively for 8 weeks. No one saw that though. No one saw him running that play properly for 8 weeks in practice leading up to that moment in the state championship game. They just see him make a play, right? So it's a testament to that over communication about what people's role are and how it's constantly shifting and moving, but also keeping kids engaged to let them know that while it might not be your moment right now, that doesn't mean your moment is not coming. And then from a coaching standpoint, making sure the position coach, hey, make sure you love them up from the standpoint of making sure you know that, we always tell everybody your value in this program is not tied to your production on the field.
I love that. And that's huge. And, coaches and players, the idea, the fine art here is the hundreds of conversations that you and I have every day that aren't in front of a team, that might be inside of the weight room, might be catching a guy after practice on the field, might be in the hallway at school. It's just that little piece of like, hey, man, we still believe in you, dude.
Yeah.
Just so you know, we still believe in you. It might not be your time at the moment, but we still believe in you. And, that part is very valuable because keeping them engaged, stay ready.
Yeah.
And I'll say on a Wednesday in late September, because that's the time. Late September, mid to late September, you're about 5 in.
Yep.
And, they don't play a lot 1 or 2 or 3. It's like, okay, all right.
Yeah.
But now we're 5 or 6 in, and that kid's saying, well, I'm not gonna have enough tape for college. And I always give them the like, having no idea myself, but I've been doing it 16 years. Somebody in this group we're going to be depending on in a week or two or 2 weeks. Or somebody in this group's going to play in the championship game that has no plans of playing anytime soon. And it happens every year, and that's where the red and black helps because those kids just practice. They take like the red group takes 8 reps during team. The black group takes 8 reps during team. The scouts, get a ton of reps. So, but man, I think like you said, get ready, stay ready. Stay ready is a great term. We use that a lot as well because the ones who want to be a part of it, man, they do. And they do. And it's not easy. There's a lot of lessons to be taught. It's why our game's awesome because you never know. And listen, as the head coach and special teams guy, you can throw guys a bone. That I'm able to do that here and there with kickoff, KOR, punt. You could throw a bone and keep guys invested and give them. I think that's our job too. We talk about coaches being aligned, finding roles. Who's your guy? And that's been amazing for me coaching specials is I find guys. And they don't want you. I love you. You're my guy.
I do all the time. I walk up to one of our freshmen. I said, we're about to play in a regional final. I said, dude, he's on kickoff and KOR, right? He doesn't play on Friday nights on offense or defense. I said, dude, you're going to be on the field the first play of the regional championship, no matter what. Right. No matter what. Right. Yeah. And you kind of see his eyes get big and you're just kind of like, it's cool because now that's his job. He owns that. And it's cool because, like you said, it becomes one of yours. Like, it's fun. And I think, from a coaching standpoint too, it's interesting because you always talk about, oh, those are my guys, all that stuff. And I always tell the coaches, like, make sure that you're developing authentic relationships that have nothing to do with football. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and little things like that. And you said something earlier that really kind of sparked my interest when you talked about the hundreds of conversations that people don't see. I think it's one of those things I always say, coach them hard, love them harder. And it's a good point. Like all the touch points, I always tell anybody in our program, don't let somebody else from the program walk near you without saying hello or saying what's up or checking in. You know what I mean? And I think those little things contribute to positive team culture and ultimately winning more than people have any idea. Unless you're in it, unless you've done it, it's hard to explain why. But just that togetherness and that,
I have for us having 120 kids and learning them all, and I have a JV coach. He's like, it's phenomenal how you remember all these names. And I was like, I don't know where my keys are right now. I can't remember where they are. And I, no idea like what I had for dinner last night. But I can tell you this, I'm going to remember that second string guard on the freshman team's name because, man, his parents sent him to Spalding and I'm responsible for him. And that's really, really matters to me. And you're right. And those are the kids that I really believe it. If you show up at Spalding football and we're winning, we're nationally ranked, all that is awesome stuff. But I'm telling you right now, man, the heart of our program is still the kid that shows up day after day after day. And he's going to make a play senior year. And we had some seniors this year that hadn't made a meaningful play in 3 years that were integral to the success of the team. And I think, for coaches and you going into year 2, those guys, man, there's a freshman right now that we're not real sure. There was many. Don't give up on a kid. Just don't do it for more reasons than football. Way more.
Right. Exactly. Hit it on the head. Right. The football piece is great. I tell them all the time, like, hey, that's awesome. We want people to make huge blocks and TFLs and all this good stuff. But if you're the type of person that we feel great about wearing the jersey and wearing the logo and representing the program, that's the win. You know what I mean? The win showing up. You already showed up to the weight room today, whether people did. That's the win. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to explain that. But Coach, I love your your philosophy, man. It's just awesome. It's just
it's good. It's excellent, man. I am, and I'm sure Keith is still listening. There he is. Yeah, it's we could go forever, man. But Coach Year was awesome stuff from my perspective. It's a lot of the same. You know, it's the coolest part of being a head coach. And Keith, you listen to so many of them, is when you match up on values and there's a reason why you win. Like I tell people that all the time. There's a reason why some guys are really inconsistent and struggle. And obviously there's other factors from a player standpoint, but there's also a reason why a guy walks into a job first year. And I think we did this, Coach, when we came and recruited too. We sat and talked philosophy for a while.
You did too.
But there's a reason why a guy walks into a place and wins year one. There was a plan in place and you worked it, and that's impressive.
I appreciate just, the community support and the amount of, kids we have, our staff that we talked about. I'd be remiss if I didn't shout them out. Our defense coordinator, Dylan Rockoff, O-line coach, Chris Brown, D-line coach, works with O-line as well, Liam Rockoff, works with quarterbacks, Brady Downing, and then running backs and linebackers, Sam Griswold. So those are the guys, and I'd be remiss if I didn't shout them out because I'm sitting here talking about them the whole time.
I would add one that's probably a whole other podcast is our strength coach, Scott Swope, who's with him as we speak right now, been with me all 12 years. Yeah. And he's, you want to talk about disagreeable givers coach, or like the guy that really keeps the staff together. Like, I'm really actually not the supreme commander at Spalding. It's Scott Swope, and he looks the part, and that's the guy that everybody listens to because he keeps us all in line. And on game day, I have no idea when we're supposed to be there. He tells me, and I show up, and I stand around at warm-ups and eat Swedish fish on the sideline and talk to the other head coach. And, he's out there running, moving. It's an army moving around. So, man, we're not here if not for those guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Guys, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the conversation and just being able to sit back myself and listen. Like I said, I created the Hostless podcast here where we're learning from you guys, right? And I could tell you guys, the back and forth was incredible. And before we got going, I was telling Spencer that, if you guys can learn from each other, then I know that our audience is learning as well. And that's what this is all about, making sure that we're doing everything we can to support each other in this profession. It is a small community, so have the opportunity to share some things like you guys did. I know it means a lot to the people out there. It certainly means a lot to me that you guys took the time. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
I appreciate it.
Thank you again for joining us for Champions, presented by Signature Championship Rings. Remember to go to their website and check out their ring designer. I think it's a great time of the year to go and design a ring and put it up on the wall in your weight room or locker room and provide some motivation for what you want to do in 2025. We want to hear from you in our Your Call segment, which we're bringing back in 2025. Please reach out to us, Keith at coachingcoordinator.com, or DM me on X at Coach K. Grabowski, to share your ideas on the different topics that we cover in the podcast. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com.